Over 2 months since Election Day, North Carolina has still not officially declared a winner in the state Supreme Court race. It's been upended by protracted legal challenges, which have ping-ponged between state and federal courts. Democratic incumbent Allison leads by 734 votes, but her opponent, Republican Jefferson Griffin, has challenged the validity of over 60,000 ballots cast in the election. To make sense of the complicated and lengthy battle over this race, here's a timeline. Let's take it back to August 23, 2024, when the Republican National Committee and North Carolina Republican Party filed a lawsuit seeking to purge 225,000 voters from the rolls who don't have a driver's license number or social security number listed in the state's database. We're bringing this up because Griffin will later make the same argument when challenging ballots. On October 17th, U.S. District Judge Richard Myers, an appointee of President-elect Donald Trump, dismisses part of the RNC's lawsuit, but keeps the case alive. Then, on Election Day, the North Carolina Supreme Court race is too close to call, though Griffin leads by about 10,000 votes towards the end of the night. A few weeks later, on November 15th, the race flips in Riggs's favor, putting her ahead by 734 votes after all outstanding absentee and provisional ballots are counted. Here's where things start to get complicated. On November 19th, the Republican-controlled state legislature passes a bill giving voters less time to fix issues with provisional ballots and giving election workers less time to count them. That same day, Griffin requests a recount in the Supreme Court race. The following day, Griffin files a series of election protests challenging over 60,000 ballots cast in the race. And on November 26th, Griffin requests that a Democrat on the State Board of Elections, which will consider his challenges, recuse herself from the case because her husband previously served as Riggs's attorney. A few days later, on December 3rd, the recount of the Supreme Court race is completed and Riggs maintains her 734 vote lead. Shortly after, the North Carolina Democratic Party files a federal lawsuit attempting to have Griffin's protest thrown out. On December 10th, a News and Observer analysis finds that Black registered voters were twice as likely to have their ballots challenged in Griffin's protests than white voters. That same day, the state completes a second recount of the results. This one was conducted by hand in a sample of precincts across the state, and again affirms Riggs's lead. The next day, the State Board of Elections rejects all of Griffin's protests in mostly party-line votes. The board also rejects Griffin's request that one of its members recuse herself. A week later, Griffin asks the North Carolina Supreme Court to intervene and prohibit the board from certifying Riggs's apparent victory. That court has a 5-2 Republican majority. A day later, on December 19th, the State Board of Elections moves Griffin's lawsuit to federal court. That leads us to this year, 2025. On January 6th, Myers, the federal judge I mentioned earlier, sends the case back to the North Carolina Supreme Court. The State Board of Elections immediately appeals his ruling to the Fourth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. The latest development in the case happened on January 7th, when the North Carolina Supreme Court issued an order temporarily blocking the State Board of Elections from certifying Riggs as the winner while it considers Griffin's case. Democrat Anita Earls and Republican Richard Dietz dissented from the majority, and Riggs recused herself from the case. We'll continue to update the story as new developments emerge.